name is Maria Bedoya, Research and Insight Coordinator here at Sussex Innovation. Welcome to the Sussex Pioneers series. Our show will help you understand how to turn your ideas into opportunities to grow and flourish, with simple methods developed alongside our colleagues at the University of Sussex. In every episode, we'll be meeting innovative local businesses to get to the heart of how real-life SMEs tackle the challenge of innovation. These discussions will be led by Doug Faulkner, our performance coach. Ideas and inspiration are everywhere if you know where to look. This first episode is about how to search for good ideas and how to decide if they were pursuing. The series is based on world-leading research from the University of Sussex. Here is Paul Nightingale, Professor of Strategy, to explain how to get started.
What exactly is innovation? Many businesses think they're not capable of innovating because they think of it as inventing something entirely new. That's not the whole truth. In fact, innovation is about successfully creating and capturing value from a new idea. It doesn't have to be a product, it could be a service, a process, or the way the business is positioned. It doesn't have to be new to the world. It could be new to the place or simply new to your organisation. And it doesn't have to be a radical change. Innovation is often very incremental. The commercialisation of steam power during the Industrial Revolution was a radical systems-wide innovation. But the increased processing power in each new generation of smartphone is an incremental innovation in the component parts of that product. You might think that most innovation draws upon cutting-edge research undertaken at universities, but often the main sources of innovative ideas are your own employees, suppliers and customers. After that are other players in your industry, such as competitors, consultants, professional bodies and conferences. As a rule of thumb, the more radical the innovation, the further away from your core business you might have to look to spot an opportunity. One final thought. Successful commercialisation can only happen if you capture the value you create. Think about the assets your business has that allows it to capture value. Is it your brand, reputation or knowledge, intellectual property like patents or trademarks, or a competitive advantage in marketing, production or operations? Throughout this series, remind yourself that innovation isn't a single flash of inspiration, it's a process. And that process involves some creativity, experimentation and careful implementation. That's why you need to build systems involving the whole team in the firm to manage it. Innovation can start from anywhere, and to find and harness the right opportunity, you must always be open and receptive to new ideas. Let's look at a few examples of how innovators in East Sussex have managed their search for innovation.
Definition Health products aim to make it more efficient for our patient as they come to their surgery. Surgeons found it very frustrating and also frustrating for patients when they arrive on the day of their surgery, all ready to go, having had 2 weeks off work, to find that they're cancelled because the hospital didn't identify at an early stage that they had cardiac disease, they'd forgotten to stop their warfarin, or their diabetes was out of control. We recognised that there were lots of inefficiencies that we found frustrating but had never really thought to address ourselves. And it came to a point where, I think probably over a glass of wine, we thought, let's do something about this. So we decided to create our initial product, which was Lifebox, which was a digital pre-assessment tool for patients. The idea being that patients could fill in all the information that the hospital needed prior to a surgical procedure at home, and also that the staff in the hospital can receive that information at an early stage in order to address any problems before they got to the hospital. We didn't realise it was going to take so long to get a contract in a hospital. Perhaps we were a bit naive. We just thought a great idea, everybody would want it. So that has been a learning process, and we've had to be patient. We've had to be disappointed sometimes. We've had to be resilient and patient all over again. But the hospitals that are the best fit for us are the ones that finally come on board. There's always a solution to a problem, even if it doesn't come up straight away. I don't think I could pinpoint a particular one from our, growing from our IT company walking out to realise that somebody else used the word Lifebox, to a hospital not renewing their contract. They've all been challenging, but actually I think I'm finally learning that they're all learning points.
Just Helpers is an ethical cleaning agency, and that means that we pay our people the real living wage. that we're interested in eco-friendly cleaning products for the environment and all that entails, and that we treat our people with dignity because we think that's really important. I was a teacher for around 14 years. I thought I'd live, die, retire doing that, and made for that. But I started to hear about human trafficking around 15 years ago or so. And I'm going to be honest, over a 3-year period, it just crushed me. It crushed me to the point where I'd be waking up in the night, overwhelmed about the statistics, the stories that I was reading and hearing. And I went for this whole cycle of someone needs to do something about this. You're a policeman, you're a social worker. And eventually I realised that I was the common denominator in every space where I was hearing about it. I ended up cleaning. And that was just a whole dinner party conversation where I sort of said to my middle class friends over mulled wine and mince pies, I think I'm going to do some cleaning because it's easy. I like it. You start it, you finish it. And there was just, if you can imagine when the music stops in a room, that's what it felt like. But one person there said, strangely, their neighbour had asked them the day before if they knew anyone that could clean. And that's how it started for me. So it was supposed to be a contained side hustle that just helped me pay my bills while I changed the world through this charity around human trafficking. About 18 months in, we started to experience pain points, growing pains. So you get to a point where you can't hold all of the information about everybody in your circle in your head, on a spreadsheet, on a Word document. And our business was a series of Microsoft documents, basically. And we realised that wasn't safe and wasn't efficient either. These pain points led me to innovating a platform called Justly. Justly is a smart, human-centred, creative scheduling and matching platform. It will have customizable onboarding processes so that different cleaning businesses can onboard their clients and their helpers in the way that works for their business. It will have plugins to really smart applications that are world leaders at what they do. Imagine, if you like, Match.com meets Just Eat. So there's all that wonderful matching of two different people, traits, interests, hobbies, things that you want to have happen in your space, and Just Eat, which connects you to services that are switched on, ready to deliver, and suit your needs as well. So it's a fusion of those two things. I think that's the easiest way I can describe it, and a whole waft of other things too.
So, the search for innovation. Let's have a conversation about that. First of all, if you could introduce yourselves.
So I'm Paul Nightingale. I'm a Professor of Strategy at the University of Sussex Business School.
I'm Nigel Lamb. I'm Chief Executive of Sussex Innovation, and prior to that I was an entrepreneur for 10 years running businesses in various sectors.
I'm Antoinette Daniel, founder of Just Helpers Cleaning Agency, Liberty Housekeeping and Justly, which is a SaaS platform.
And I'm Peter Snuggs, Chief Operating Officer of Definition Health. We're building a digital surgical pathway.
So this episode is called No Pain, No Gain. What pain inspired some of your innovations?
So I'm happy to answer that one. So Definition Health was founded by two NHS consultants. They've been practicing for 20 plus years each, and they've seen at the coalface just how difficult it is to get consistent information about patients, to allow that information to follow the patient all the way through the pathway, and ultimately, to drive true patient safety. And so the pain point is really taking paper out of the process.
Okay, so what was going wrong?
So in the NHS and actually the broader healthcare community, there is still an over-reliance on paper and an over-reliance on administration being conducted within the hospital premises. So that's huge inefficiency. You have clinical people who are predominantly doing administration tasks rather than actually what they're trained and they're passionate about. So the solution is all about creating a standard set of information, but bringing a lot of the administration into the comfort of the patient's home. So they can take their time, they can use the support of their family to provide all of that information, and that's automatically delivered to the hospital. So all of a sudden the clinical teams are spending 5 minutes just reviewing the information and then deciding, do we need to intervene? Do we need to bring that patient in for a more intensive pre-assessment? Or actually, can that patient go straight into surgery?
For us, it was pain as well. So we had been existing for about 3 years, and we'd got to that point where spreadsheets, Word documents, written notebooks just weren't cutting the mustard, and we needed to digitalise and automate elements of our business. And then when we started to look around for different programs and platforms, there was just nothing out there that gave a comprehensive solution to our business. And even, there was some that maybe did 3 out of 7 modules that we needed, but we needed an end-to-end creative solution. And so in the end, we've gone through various iterations where we're building our own.
You've done it yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I think that's. I think it's really interesting because definition of health is a great example of where the pain became greater over time, and actually then the solution came along at the right time. Another great example of how the pain can actually change situationally is video conferencing. Video conferencing has been around for 20 years. It's not a new technology. It's been widely used. Zoom and Teams existed before the pandemic. But still, lots of people thought, I have to go to that meeting because you must do that meeting face to face. And then when COVID hits and we're all forced at home, all of a sudden we rethought and thought, do I really need to travel for that meeting? And that was the pain then, is travel. And actually, even now that we're kind of, COVID and restrictions are a thing of the past, hopefully forever, actually we now view the pain of business travel as different. And we've reassessed actually where that pain point is. And so pain can create over time. And again, I say, definition and justly are great examples of where actually the pain becomes too big, and actually then we realise and reassess.
How do you test whether what you found on your search is actually a good idea or not? Paul, what do you think?
Well, there's lots of tools you can use to do that. I think what we know from the research on that is that you often can't predict that from the start whether or not it's going to be a success. So is the technology going to work? Is the market out there? Are people going to pay for it? So it is quite difficult. So the advice we would give is experiment. Start small, try and learn, talk to your customers, see whether they like what you've got and what you're offering, whether it adds value for them and they're going to pay for it. Yeah. And then as you learn what they like, then expand out, invest more, and just gradually improve over time. But take a very, very kind of experimental, accept uncertainty in your management of this process. And that way you won't get locked into something which isn't what your customers want. So you need to be flexible. And this is the really difficult thing about managing innovation, and why passion is so important, because it's hard work. And you've got to really, really be disciplined in learning what the customer wants and how you can deliver it better than your competitors, and create value that you can then capture for your firm.
So different forms of prototyping, do you mean?
Yeah, so prototyping is a really important tool. So we're going to talk about kind of the minimum viable product. So having something that's small, it's simple, it's like a model kind of product that you show to your customers, and there's enough there that they can say, I like this, I don't like this, can you change this? This is really good. I didn't realise that this would be useful for me. Yeah. But when doing that, what a really key thing to do is make sure in that product you've built in an ability to collect data and learn. So it's not just an impression, you've actually got some data behind that that you can use to improve your product the next time round. And just cycle fast.
Yeah. And if I could build on Paul, there are the tools out there and techniques, and it's so important. But the other thing that we find all the entrepreneurs, the great entrepreneurs we work with have, is a mindset. It's when you fail, that's your best learning opportunity. It's not a failure. If you get too hurt and you walk away, that's why things aren't successful. That's the passion that drives you, is constantly trying something and being willing just to dust yourself off and try again and try again. Nothing works first time. Nothing. It's always trial and error. It's always changing. It's tweaking. It's the people of that growth mindset who are willing to try different things and to learn and develop, adapt fast. They're the successful ones.
And pain and passion, whatever motivates, is going to keep you on that treadmill. Can you both relate to that?
Yeah, I can. We'll talk about passion, but we'll also talk about energy. And the one thing I've seen is, in order to take your idea to the market from minimum viable product to market, you need that never-ending energy and the will to succeed, and you need a thick skin. So it all starts with that quite basic data capture or information capture. I mean, we've now rolled that into our system, so every single patient, every single clinical user has an opportunity to feedback their experience. So it's now automated, but in the early days it was all spreadsheets and Word documents and all sorts.
So this professionalisation of collecting data on your innovation is really important. So the old analog way of doing it, if you have something and you go to a user and you say, do you think this is good? By definition, if they're talking to you, they like you. So they're going to say yes. So what you really want to do is not just be asking them subjectively, what do you think about this? But actually think, does their behaviour change? And to do that, you need to have some good metrics of what they want to do. So is there a reduction in the amount of paperwork that's going on, and actually have a baseline as well to compare it against. So when you change your product, you can see whether or not it has an effect, and have proper objective data rather than just subjective data of people saying, "Oh, I love this product."
Nigel, what does Sussex Innovation do for SMEs around the search for innovation?
Well, to me, there's two very distinct things that a good entrepreneur always do. One is, Sussex Innovation's been helping companies to grow for 25 years, to get set up to grow and to innovate and create. But still, the most popular thing we do is insight. And that's looking at marketplaces, looking at competitors, looking at trends.
It's the foundation of any innovation, isn't it?
It's the foundation of any innovation. So to me, that's the empirical data. It's what knowledge is out there, what information is out there, what can we find out, what are other people doing, what are people doing, trends, tangential sectors, other industries. And so we do a lot of work providing insight into that using widely available or proprietary databases. But on top of that, the second most important thing is eyes and ears. Of all the entrepreneurs we work with, very few have a secret idea that nobody else knows. It's very rare. What they're brilliant at is collecting different pieces of information, a customer's pain point, an idea, something they've seen internationally or in a different sector, and just shaping that together into a new business idea. But anyone else could have found those things, but they just wouldn't have joined the dots.
I think for SMEs in particular, a really important source of innovation is going to be your suppliers.
Right.
So they know the value of what they're offering, and they have an understanding of how it adds value to other firms. So if you talk to your suppliers about what new innovations they've got, they will be able to tell you about how it might fit into the processes within your firm to improve it. And that will give you ideas both about what the technological opportunities there are out there, but also what your competitors and other firms in your sector are doing. So suppliers are a really, really important source of innovation. There's also pain within your customers. If you can find out what's hurting them and solve it, then that's the first step towards success and innovation. So customers and suppliers are really, really key sources of information for innovation.
Research is key. Research is key. A piece of advice I once got is, Starbucks figured out way back when that there was a market for hot coffee. Then they figured out there was a market for iced coffee. It doesn't mean that there's a market for lukewarm coffee. So you just do your research. There's no sort of natural line that you can draw from one point to another. You've got to do your research and keep going back to your customers, as you say, keep going back to your suppliers and really understand what their needs are. And actually, really importantly, those needs change. So, for Definition Health, the immediate need was to take paper out of the process, to digitise a pathway. But actually that's moved on. With COVID, everybody's now talking about digital. So constantly evolving and really going back to where do you want to be? What's your moonshot? How, go back to your vision and really make sure that you're clear about where you want to get to.
This is a really fascinating conversation. I'm going to have to pause it there because there's a clip I'd love to show everyone.
So one thing that I've definitely noticed is the increase in representation of various groups. I mean, in this shop there is some horrendous packaging, just like 1970s, cis white heterosexual women in their all 70s flowing blonde hair glory. But the industry is finally catching up where various groups are being represented. And it's great because it's making those products available to a whole new sector of an audience, and it's in everybody's interest. One of the things I've particularly noticed in the past few years is a lot more toys being developed for disabled users, which I just think is brilliant. I think there's a statistic that 1 in 5 people are disabled. So immediately people are increasing the revenue by 20% by including those people, as well as providing things that should be available for everybody.
Absolutely.
So I think this innovation that people are quite slowly catching on to really is really, really good. If you're coming up with a business idea, if it's going to be appealing to you, then there's going to be someone like you that will also find it appealing. And it's that constant entrepreneurial thing of, you know, looking in the market, what's missing? Am I being spoken to? Am I getting what I want?
Lockdown gave me ample opportunity to research into the industry, find out what was happening prior to COVID, obviously, and that did change a lot. But it is definitely seen in the explosion of people being at home alone, being a bit bored, you know, what can I do with myself? And sex toys seem to be an answer to a lot of that. And, you know, the industry has seen a massive boom in terms, I think most companies saw a 60% rise in their revenue and sales during the first couple of lockdowns. And then as a result, we're seeing actually, although the industry was predicted to be worth about 4.8 billion by 2025, I think it is, I think that figure is actually now doubled because, you know, because people are, you know, they've opened this door to this conversation. Gwen was our first vibrator. How I came about Gwen was I looked at a lot of competitors' websites and wanted to go through that experience as a first-time buyer. And the biggest thing was it was so overwhelming. There was just so much choice. It didn't feel like I could make an informed decision. With Gwen, I wanted to have something that looked beautiful on your bedside table. I looked at kind of what was in the market and what was selling well. Kind of started from there and then worked with a supplier in the UK who helped with manufacturers in China. Using that interchange with the supplier in the UK was super helpful because they had all the knowledge. I think their business has been in business for 20 odd years. So they definitely were the experts who kind of coached me along that journey, which was really great for me as someone who knows nothing about the manufacturing process.
So my journey into the sort of world of CO2 and CO2 saving wasn't a direct one. I didn't buy this business as an environmentalist with a vision to change the world around CO2 and construction. I came to it indirectly. I came to it when a customer approached us to recycle a particularly difficult type of waste, and we had to find a way to do that. We did that, and we did that in a way that produced cold asphalt. Now, once we'd done that, we thought, hang on a minute, cold asphalt's probably got a better carbon footprint than hot asphalt. What is that? And we worked with some colleagues from the University of Sussex Innovation Centre to do those calculations. And we were quite surprised that a single load of asphalt, typical truck that you see driving around, had enough CO2 in there to drive 9,000 car kilometres. And that by producing cold asphalt, we'd save 40% of that. So 40% is good, but 40% of a big number like 9,000 car kilometres was even better. So that opened this whole new world of, well, hang on a minute, what other construction materials have got a bigger or similar carbon footprint? And that led us on to our good friend concrete.
Antifungal resistance is at least as important as MRSA. It devastates food crops and it devastates patients for which there are very few therapies that can now treat antifungal resistance caused by the alternative oxidase. And our mission is to develop new compounds that will effectively treat these new and emerging fungal strains like Candida auris that affect the COVID-19 patients in ICUs, and to give them a better prognosis once they have their diseases diagnosed. When we brought the management team together, we had a particular skill set which forced us to look at the opportunities to develop antifungal compounds in the pharmaceutical market. We could have gone into agrochemicals, but we didn't have that expertise. So we looked for opportunities in the pharmaceutical market, and then, if you recall, narrowed that down so that we could find the niche where we could compete with really, really big companies like Pfizer and companies like that. And that's where we alighted on Candida auris, because we realized that was a compelling need. It's killing patients in hospitals with COVID-19. There are no treatments for it. That's where we put our stake in the ground. And we said, okay, we are going to dominate this sector. And it's that clinical and commercial story that's been very powerful with our investors.
A key moment in the research was the collaboration that I had with the Japanese group, because that allowed us to really to visualize what the structure of the protein was.
Yeah, and that was a fantastic point, really, and it was a point where we could get involved and work with yourself to really engage with some of those market applications that came out of that collaboration. And we looked at agrochemical applications and some of the issues in the world around banana crops and coffee crops being devastated by fungal infection. And then further actually into those kind of human applications with Candida auris and some of those other areas. And it's by engaging with that and understanding the scale and the global nature of that problem, we realised there was real value in how AOTS could actually be incorporated.
And that was an important milestone that you'd reached when I met you, because of course you've established at that point that there is what alternative oxidase can do and how it can be used, but what you didn't know was whether anybody would pay for it. And of course you'll remember that we got the BBSRC grant, and I spent 3 or 4 months out in the marketplace talking to agrochemical companies, pharmaceutical companies, venture capitalists, and of course the message we got from them was very, very clear. If you develop this technology, we will invest in it. And they made it very clear that we would need to get it to a certain point, which of course is the journey that we're now on.
What are some of the maybe the dead ends that you've been led down, or the things that you've tried that kind of you've realised this isn't going anywhere? And when do you know that's the point? How do you find out?
Yeah, this is a difficult thing to manage. So we've spoken earlier about innovation being about passion. It's a really difficult, uncertain thing to do, and you need people who are going to push it forward and put in all the hours.
Yeah.
And they get committed, and organisations get committed. But it's uncertain. So every now and then you'll be committed to something that's a dead end. So it's important to have a bit of a process in there, to have stage gates where you're like, okay, if it doesn't deliver at this point, we exit.
Yeah.
Because otherwise you can just continue, and the longer you go, the more and more resources that go in. So having that ability to stop and then extract as much value as you can. And a lot of that, even if you decide to stop, will be there's a lot of learning that you can then draw on. So next time around, as we've been talking about, you can kind of, fail, but next time be better. That's the key thing.
And that's exactly where we're at, actually. We're a new tech company that we've had those conversations up front, and the way that they work, their agile way, the sprints that kind of put natural circuit breakers all the way through the project have really enabled us.
One of the things that we find that's ultra important when you're trying to get innovation and you think about the people around you is diversity of thinking. Whereas if you surround yourself with people who have similar backgrounds and experience to you, you're all going to come up with the same ideas. And innovation is about new ideas and seeing the world differently. So the most important thing is actually to build a group of people around you who don't have a background like you, who don't think like you, who have the same experience, who challenge. And so it's not trying to find people who you'd really gel with on a personal level. You can go out for dinner with them and have some fun. To challenge and to innovate in a business, you need really disparate thinking.
But is it not both, Nigel? Is it not? You need to have a working relationship, you need to have some connection, but also you need to be challenged. So you need to arrange.
I would say it depends on the circumstance. If you're in steady state and you're just running a business in a very static environment, then people who know that industry, know that sector, can drive it in the very same way. If you want to innovate, you need a breadth of views.
You need to be challenged. I'm interested to ask both of you, actually, what is the secret sauce? Because not everything's laid out beautifully and planned perfectly. What do you recognise? What are you sniffing out in people where you can see they're on a good path to the search for innovation? Do you see it here?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think what the evidence says about successful innovation from a whole load of research that's been done is a big focus on addressing user needs. So giving your customers something that's valuable for them.
So people who are interested in the customers first.
Yeah, I mean, they need to know, they need to understand their markets, and they need to understand how they're generating value for their customers. There's technical expertise is obviously important, and that's, making those investments. We do know that there's a really big role that we've talked about earlier about kind of champions for innovation. So people who've got that passion and that energy who can kind of drive things forward. A degree of management. So you don't want to just rely exclusively on kind of charismatic personalities. You need to have stage gates. You need to have, some management processes in place. And then the final thing I'd really stress is that making innovation an organization-wide activity. So it's not just R&D or
it's a culture.
It's a culture of every bit of the firm is focused on improving what you do, delivering for the customer, and being innovative and learning, getting that learning kind of built in. And those, I think, are the really key things.
What would be everyone's top tips for SMEs, building on what Paul's just said?
I'd probably just take it back to nature. Darwin taught us that the most successful species weren't the biggest, the strongest, the most fierce. It was the ones that evolved fastest to changing circumstances, and that's what it's about. It's about learning, feedback loops. Willing to accept mistakes, and focus on doing something new every day?
Getting a team of people around you that will expand your mind and your thinking, even when it feels a little bit difficult.
As Nigel was saying,
absolutely.
Yeah, so I think there's two things. I think first, research is key. So understanding your market, understanding your customer need. The second thing is, if you're going to fail quickly and learn and move on. We talked earlier about holding on to ideas and pushing it, which sometimes could be the right idea, but generally failing quickly on an idea is better, and then you move on, evolve, learn, and enhance.
So obviously, a lot of the businesses watching won't be at the beginning of their innovation story. They'll be established businesses with products and services, but they'll need to look for new innovations. What are some of the things that can support that or get in the way of that?
Well, one of there is what we call the innovator's dilemma of your existing business holding you back.
Can you give me an example?
The classic one is Blockbuster. Blockbuster Video, they knew the movie industry, they knew what the customers wanted, they were doing a great job.
Yeah.
They knew Netflix came along, they knew about streaming, but they had all these shops and they just couldn't let go of the shops.
Couldn't make a difference.
And move into that. And clearly, Blockbuster doesn't exist anymore, and Netflix is now a huge successful business.
Well, what things are probably going to be out there already for our SMEs that are in the middle of their journey to look out for that could be holding them back?
There's an element of really making sure that your message moves on with your growth.
Right.
Prime example for Definition Health is we started out purely in electronic pre-assessment. Doesn't sound that exciting, does it? But by the time we created our Lifebox product, and then added on the recovery product, all of a sudden we're talking about a total digital surgical solution. And that covers the whole pathway. But actually I've caught some of our salespeople still talking about electronic pre-assessment. And so making sure that you are talking about you as a company today and the journey that you've been on, but the products that you have available today is really important. So keeping your staff on message, keeping the vision at the core of what they're doing is really critical as well.
Great.
And I think staffing and support is the final thing. So you as an entrepreneur, it's a little bit like the Blockbuster dilemma. You need to release yourself in order to innovate the next thing, and you need to make sure that you're undergirded by someone else that can carry on keeping the home fires burning.
Right. So get to a certain point where you can relinquish control so that you can get back to being curious and stimulated.
Absolutely.
That's interesting.
And also, as we talk about the source of innovation, don't forget, we always tend to focus on the products, the sexy stuff, the things you can see. But it's not just the products, it's the processes. McDonald's still just serves burgers like other people, but they've been brilliant at innovating their supply chain and their office and their kitchens and everything else to make it super uber efficient. So all of that you don't see behind the scenes. The product looks the same, but sources of innovation, it's not just products, process.
The key thing is to make sure when you're innovating, what you're managing matches your ambition.
Right.
So your innovation could be, I've got an existing market and I'm introducing new products and services, or I've got my existing products and services, I'm moving into a new market.
Right.
Or you could be going for something really radical, which is new products and services in a new market, which is a much, much more difficult thing to do. So you need to ensure your management plans and how you're going to manage your innovation processes matches the complexity of your ambitions.
That's fantastic. I really appreciate this conversation. I feel like the discussion we've had hopefully is going to inspire and also make SMEs out there feel that they're on the right track, because there's so many things you can do, but ultimately it's get the right people around you, get challenged, do your research, just constantly be vigilant and curious and engage in your passions or your pains. Excellent. Thanks ever so much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The magic of innovation happens when a person or a group of people connect dots or see patterns in a way that has never been seen before. We all know the classic examples of Archimedes in his bath or Newton under the apple tree, when seemingly minor events gave clarity to a much bigger problem, and suddenly the idea just clicked into place. We've heard on this show from these brilliant, innovative businesses that more often than not, they were not sitting in a room trying to solve a problem when a core idea hit them. They were out at a dinner party or having drinks with friends when suddenly something became obvious to them, and it all just clicked into place. Everybody has good ideas from time to time, but the difference between the great innovators and everybody else is that they know how to turn it into reality. At Sussex Innovation, we're hoping to help you to take your sparks and turn them into valuable innovations. This search for innovation really focuses on the first part of our process, which is insight. Think firstly, what are your innovation goals? Secondly, as we've heard from many of our guests, what you really want to explore is what the customer need you are trying to address is. Next, in terms of insight, ask yourself, who could potentially give you more information or point you in the right direction? It could be a colleague or a friend. It could be a supplier, customer, or a competitor. Or perhaps you want to come and talk to one of our colleagues at the University of Sussex, who have vast knowledge across a huge range of topics and can provide valuable insight for you. Finally, in terms of insight, I'll borrow from the works of probably the greatest academic in the field of innovation, Clay Christensen, who came up with this great phrase of what needs to prove true for this to work. His idea that rather than wait until a project is finished to evaluate it, to see if it's delivering the outcomes that was expected or desired, you should keep thinking about the important assumptions that you have to prove true and how can you swiftly and inexpensively test if they are valid. Small incremental steps and fast feedback loops usually are the steps to a great innovation rather than looking for a single massive leap. Here at Sussex Innovation and the University of Sussex, we love working with small and medium-sized companies from the region to help them to innovate. We hope that you enjoy watching the rest of this series and that it will provide some practical solutions that you can implement straight away in your own business or department.
Thanks for watching. In our next episode, we'll be looking at how to harness the power of trends to build something even more compelling. Make sure you join the conversation with our business community by clicking on the Discuss button found on the Learning platform. Also, keep an eye out for the next Q&A session, where our experts will be online and ready to answer your questions around the search for innovation.